Now, still on the Supreme Court's judgment, some governors in Nigeria have called for closure following the Supreme Court judgment, which affirmed the victory of President Bola Tinubu in the 2023 presidential elections. Speaking after a meeting with the president, they urged all members of the opposition to accept the judgment in good faith and support the president in his quest to transform the nation. Several governors had visited the president to congratulate him on the victory at the Apex Court, which threw out the appeals filed by the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi. Now, joining us further to discuss this development is Professor of Law at the University of Lagos, Professor Yemi. Warm welcome to you, sir, and thanks for joining us at Continental Prime.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Good evening.
Now, Professor, what's your reaction to today's ruling by the Supreme Court, and what legal precedents or principles were considered by the Supreme Court when ruling on this case?
Expectedly, we knew that the Supreme Court will have a bit of a challenge of turning detailed judgment of the tribunal, first instance, meaning the Presidential Election Tribunal. We also knew, as legal minds, that it will be difficult, if not absolutely impossible, to introduce fresh piece of evidence at the Supreme Court. Aside the fact that even if the evidence is introduced and accepted by the Supreme Court, it's not likely going to change anything, if at all. So we were also convinced that it will almost be a difficult challenge to convince the Supreme Court that 25% is a requirement
for the FCC
in Abuja from President of Nigeria. Certain allegations that were made were quasi-criminal in nature or criminal in nature. So once you allege crime in an election petition, you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, because the standard of proof in criminal cases is different from that of civil cases. So it's your choice to introduce criminal elements in your matter, but you must be ready to prove that beyond reasonable doubt. On Harem, it was a rule of convenience for INEC. That procedure had not been made law in Nigeria, meaning it's not a requirement of the law that once election results are not transmitted every time on Harem, the outcome becomes nullified or questionable. That's not the law. It was a rule of convenience for INEC to make their proceedings or processes easier. And whether or not that is done will not likely change the outcome of the case, because they will need to prove that what INEC declared was not correct or was fraudulent. So RF has not been made a matter of law as of today. And there are so many arguments made were kind of cosmetic, because the law had been settled on most of the issues canvassed. You know, in the court of appeal, in the tribunal decision that was appealed, the court actually pointed it out that you are claiming irregularity in a number of polling units. You did not tender the results. You did not call eyewitnesses who witnessed the fraud being perpetrated in those polling units. And at best, whatever evidence given by any other person will be hearsay. So to me, beyond sentiment, the judgment meets our expectations as far as what the law says, what the Supreme Court position is.
Now, staying with you, Professor, were there any specific arguments presented by both sides that had a notable impact on the Supreme Court's decision?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I said, was there any notable evidence presented by both sides that had a notable impact on the Supreme Court's decision?
Whether there was any argument canvassed that had a negative impact on the Supreme Court?
Yes, note specific arguments presented by both sides that had a notable impact on the Supreme Court's decision.
Yes, the parties, fair enough, the respective counsel made some logical arguments in respect of the cases they brought before the Supreme Court. It would have been an interesting scenario to change the position of the law to convince the lower court and the Supreme Court that 25% votes in the FCC Abuja is not a requirement of the valid presidential election. If the Supreme Court had accepted that argument, that would have changed the electoral law in Nigeria. That would also have changed or altered the constitutional law of the country. But then the parties made attempts to advance the law, and the beauty of democracy and legal process is that you canvass your argument, you canvass for votes, you voted in or out. If you are happy, you don't challenge the outcome. If you're not happy, you challenge the outcome, you go to court, you canvass your argument, you put forward necessary documents to prove your case, and if the court accedes to your request, the decision is given in your favor.
Okay.
If the court thinks otherwise, then your argument is declined and the court will refuse to give you that which you have asked for. Whichever way, victory for Nigeria, victory for democracy, and that democracy is advancing.
Now, Professor, okay, this whole litigation period has been highly divisive. It divided opinions, and the president is ruling over a deeply fragmented nation. President Bola Tinubu, in his response to the judgment, highlighted the importance of national unity. How do you foresee his administration addressing the divisions that may have emerged during this legal battle? How would you advise him to move on to, make the country more unified as we conclude?
In victory, you have to be magnanimous. Even in his acceptance speech, once you are elected as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you are no longer president of a particular section or segment of the country. You are not president of a political party. You are president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You have a mandate to administer and govern and rule the country, including those who voted for you and those who voted against you. So I think the president has done the right thing. He has taken the right step with his speech, saying everybody should join hands in building a new Nigeria. And I will expect losers also to be reasonable, because it's not about the president, it's about our country, my country, our country, their country. And we don't have another country we can call ours. And there must be an end to litigation. There will be a time out for election. 4 years is around the corner. They should go back to the drawing board and do the needful.
Thank you very much. And that note, I'd like to say thank you to you, Professor Yemi, for your contribution and your insight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.